QuickBooks Pro Plus Desktop 2022 Bank Reconciliation Month 2 Reports. Get ready because we bookkeeping pros are moving up the hilltop with QuickBooks Pro Plus Desktop 2022. Here we are in our Get Great Guitars practice file, going through the setup process with the View dropdown, the Open Windows list on the left-hand side, Company dropdown, Home page in the middle, maximizing it to the gray area. Reports dropdown, Company and Financial. We're going down to the Balance Sheet Standard, customizing that report with a range change from 010122 to 022822, and then changing the fonts, change fonts to the size of 14. Okay, yes please, and okay. So we've got our information up top. We're looking into the checking account. We're focusing in on the bank reconciliation, which we had almost completed last time, but we didn't quite reconcile, and we left ourselves in suspense for this episode here. So let's go to the banking dropdown and reconcile and see where we were at last time. This number representing the beginning balance on the bank statement, the ending balance on the bank statement. Continuing on, then we saw that we went through all the items on the deposits and the checks side, everything that was on the bank statement, we then found on the books. If it wasn't on the books but on the bank statement, we added it to our books. And then some of the items that are still in the books but not on the bank statement, indicated without a check here, are the items that are going to be the reconciling items. So when we reconcile, we're going to get a bank reconciliation, which is going to be comparing and contrasting our books to the bank statement. And these items that are not checked off will be the differences, the open items, the difference between the two. Remember that as you reconcile, you want this item down below, the difference to be at 0, because if it's anything other than 0, even if it's a small amount, you will be lowering the effectiveness of the bank reconciliation as an internal control greatly, due to the fact that even if it is a small amount, it's more and more likely, way more likely, that the amount is still due to multiple transactions, possibly multiple deposits and multiple checks, as opposed to just one kind of rounding difference in terms of entering the data. So you can force it to reconcile, but if you do that, you take a lot of the internal control out of it, and the internal control you're looking for is really to see that all other transactions, all the cash transactions, are validated if you have a precise reconciliation to a high degree, and that gives the other side of the transactions, which are going to other areas of the accounting system, because it's a double entry accounting system, including the purchases cycle, the sales cycle, the employee cycle, more validation as well. So let's go ahead and reconcile it now. So we'll hit the blue button, the moment we've been waiting for. Blue button, savor it, savor it. We're going to go down here. We're going to have both. We want the summary and the detail. If you just have one of them, you want to be taking the detail. As we first see these reports, I'm going to close this out. Then they're in like the normal report format. But if you close it and go back into it, it might be in a PDF format. Therefore, you want to save it when it's in this format. Typically, you got more options to save it. Also, you want to save it after you're done reconciling it, so that because when you do another reconciliation, you might not be able to get back to the previous reconciliation as easily, and you'd like to have a hard copy of it. If someone goes in and deletes checks or something like that, you'd like to have a hard copy of the reconciliation to be able to reconstruct what has happened. So we're going to go to the customized reports up top. Let's go to the fonts and numbers. Let's bring this one on up to 14. 14 on the font, por favor. Yes, please. Okay. So there we have it. So now this summary report gives us a nice summary. I'm going to close out the triangles here so we can look at it, but it doesn't really give us the detail we want. So let's take a look at it. You really want the detail report to give you the detail you want, although it gives you way too much detail, more than you would typically need. So we got the beginning balance. That's the 61,241.85. That's going to be the beginning balance on the bank statement. That's not really the crucial part of the report. We got the clear transactions. That's going to be the 40,348, which is the difference between these two items, to get to the ending balance of the 101,590.05, which we're going to call here the cleared balance, or in other words, the bank statement balance. We want to look at the bank statement balance and see the difference between it and our register balance, which is the unclear transactions, the outstanding checks and deposits. So this is the meat. This is what we're looking at. You might be a vegetarian or something, so the meat might not be the important part sometimes, but this is like the important, like the sandwich, whatever the important part of the sandwich is, this is it. That's that important part. And so these transactions, and then you get to the register balance, the 95,259.08. Let's open up the caret on the left-hand side and note that if we go to the balance sheet, that 95,259.08 is what's on the balance sheet at that date. Let's go back to the reconciliation. Then we have the current ending information up top. We didn't have any current stuff because we stopped entering data as of February. So we don't have anything after that. It's not really relevant, again, to the bank reconciliation. In any case, the meat of it, or the important part of the sandwich, this being like a sandwich, like a bun, top, bottom, are these highlighted areas right there. That's where the important part of the sandwich, whatever part you enjoy. So if we go up top and we look at the cleared transactions, these just tie out to what was on kind of like the bank statement that we checked off, all those things that we checked off, the 11,633, 51,981. Those are these items there. And then we have the unclear transactions. And the unclear transactions, they tell us there's 7 checks and two deposits. That's great, but that is where this report is lacking, very much so lacking. Because if you give this to an auditor and they say, well, that's great, but these numbers do not tell me anything, because I want to know exactly which checks are the differences, because then I can check and make sure that those are legitimate checks to see if they cleared in the following month, in the month of March. If they did, then I feel validated about your reconciliation, and that helps me to validate all of your cash transactions and all the other side of the cash transactions for the double entry accounting system. So we really need the detail on these 2 items. So for that, we got to go to the bank reconciliation detail, and we say, okay, well, how about this report then? And then you go, wow, that's way too much information, but okay. And then we can go to the customized reports up top. Let's make it a little larger, possibly not to 14, but let's bring it on up to like 10. That should be good. Let's do it to 10. Yes, please. Okay. Closing the caret on the left-hand side, making it a little bit larger so we can see stuff. We not see activity. And then we got here, again, we got the clear transactions, which isn't really, that's not the important part of the sandwich. The cleared deposits. Here's where the action happens. Here's where the action is, where we want to be. So we're at the 51,981. So the starting point was, I'm sorry, we're looking at this 101,590. That's what we're looking at. There it is, the 101,590.05. And then the unclear transactions, the checks and the deposits now listed out. These being the differences, these being the items that were in our books that didn't clear the bank statement, most of them because they were written at the end of February and didn't have time to clear, although this top one is one that was written in January, so it's been outstanding for over a month now, so we're a little bit concerned about that one, but that's still going to be a reconciling item. And then these deposits on down below, those are the differences that we can now look at, and we can actually check on them. We can verify them. We could say, did these actually clear in March, the following month? And if they did, then great. If they did, I'm not really so concerned, again, with these particular items to say, I really need to know that these particular items cleared, although it's good to check that out. The point is that if I can validate those as being legitimate reconciling items from the bank to our books, we have 2 set of books that are done separately that are verifying each other on a separate basis, making all transactions in the account a more valid, a higher degree of probability or validity. And that means the other side of the transactions of the double entry accounting system also more likely to be more valid. Those transactions going through all the other focal points or areas, including the purchasing cycle, the sales cycle, and the employee cycle. So that's the detail. We get down to that ending point of the 95,295,808. That should, if I open up the caret again, tie out to our balance sheet once again. So the 95,259,08. Let's go ahead and save these reports now. Let's go to the summary. We're going to save these reports. You do want to save them because these are not reports that you can go into as readily as other types of reports. These are not reports that are created as we do the data input. They are kind of like internal control types of reports. So you want to save them as you make them typically. So we're going to go to the reports drop down, save as a PDF. And let's just put this into our reconciliation thing here. And I'm just going to call this, what did we call it last time? Rec detail. Oh, this is the summary. Let's call it a bank rec summary. and this is 02.28.22, 02.28.22. And so we'll save that one. And then the other side is on the balance sheet. Now the bank reconciliation detail, let's print that one out, saving it as a PDF, having it ready in case there are problems in the future. And we're going to say this is the, what did I call, rec detail? It's a funny name. 02.28.22, and save those two. Now again, once you close these, if I was to close these reports, bank reconciliation, and go to the reports drop down and go to the banking, you could find the previous reconciliation here, and or you could go to the reports center up top, and then you could go to the maximizing this standard tab, banking, left-hand side, scrolling down through the banking section. You've got the previous reconciliation here. So here it is. Now, if I run that report, you might want to close anything that's in a PDF, because I'm not gonna save that. It might try to open it as a PDF file. So just be aware of that. And again, you might have some limitations in terms to be able to go back to previous bank reconciliations. So you want to have those bank reconciliations saved somewhere secure so you can access them if needed.